Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
Braindead, or Dead Alive, is a horror comedy that came out in 1992 that's written and directed by Peter Jackson. So Braindead... Where do I even start with this? So I guess for starters, Braindead is a film that was actually banned upon release in 3 different countries. I believe it was banned in South Korea, Singapore, and Finland. And it's just because the violence and the gore was so incredibly abundant, to say the least, in this film, and it's incredibly over the top. So obviously me knowing that going into this, like, even though, like, I'm a person that loves, like, actual horror films more than horror comedy, this just seemed like a film that I had to check out. So I'm not gonna waste any time here. I'm just gonna cut right to the bullshit and give you guys exactly what I think about this film. I think that this is quite possibly one of my favorite self-aware horror comedies that I've ever seen in my life. This film, I would probably consider to be the apex of horror comedy. Because this film was just, from start to finish, it was incredibly consistent. It was incredibly self-aware, and everything was so intentional and is genuinely hilarious. There are moments in this film where I was in tears laughing so hard. It was really effective in essentially every single department. And what's also so awesome about it is that when you're watching it, you can definitely see that it's inspired by Sam Raimi's films, The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2.
Party's over.
But it's just doing its own thing, and in my opinion, felt a lot more large scale. It felt a bit more ambitious. There is so much going on in this film, and in my opinion, this is like one of Peter Jackson's films where he's like telling everybody, like, look, I can handle some large scale projects, because some people wouldn't say that this is that large scale, but in my opinion, it really is. Like, especially what happens in the third act in this movie in a house party. Like, that takes so much preparation, so much coordination. There's a lot of different safety concerns you have to take into account. There's so much that goes in to everything. I mean, this entire film, it takes a lot of preparation, but especially in that third act, there's just so much dedication, so much preparation, so much makeup effects, so much practical effects, so much goddamn blood. I'm pretty sure this was an overwhelming project. I mean, if I was in charge of this project, I'd be absolutely overwhelmed, because there's just so much going on, and it's all just really great and really impressive and really funny. And there's honestly some moments in here that, even though it's really kind of dumb and cheesy and self-aware, there were some moments that was kind of unsettling. Just like through the imagery and sound alone, you're just like, wow, like, if I was to watch this when I was a kid or something, like, I would probably be traumatized, because there is a lot of just disturbing imagery in this film. Even though, you know, as an adult you watch it, you're like, okay, yeah, this is cheesy and dumb. But you can't deny that a lot of this stuff is still really, really impressive. And for me, it just seems kind of unfair to just, like, you know, pick things out in this film and say, oh, that looks dated. Oh, that's cheesy. Like, because it's all so intentional that it's hard to really, like, criticize it, because it just seems that everything that Peter Jackson was going for in this film, he achieved to the perfect degree. And there was just so much about this film that really, really worked for me. And again, like, horror comedy really isn't like I'm not the hugest fan of horror comedy, even though I love films like Shaun of the Dead. I love The Evil Dead 2. But even House was a pretty solid movie. But, like, again, like I said in the beginning, I'm somebody who would probably rather watch, like, a genuine horror film. But this film was so much fun, and I can see myself coming back to this film a lot of different times because of how fun it was. And it's just such a creative film too. Like, that's another reason why I just really love this film. It's incredibly creative. And just so y'all know, I watched the uncut version, like the full uncut version. And so I'm not sure like what versions y'all have seen out there and what the actual significant differences are between them. But all I know was that in the uncut version that I watched, there was this really creative decision to incorporate the previous scene's dialogue in the background of every scene that you were watching. It was like unlike anything that I've seen before. And for me, it was just really effective because it creates this really like psychologically disorienting, like atmospheric mood throughout the entire film that kind of makes you feel like you're going crazy. But it just really works in terms of it being immersive and kind of really sucking you into the film. I guess I can see people finding it really annoying and finding it distracting. But for me personally, I thought it was really effective. I thought it was really creative, and it really made the film even more engaging than it already was. So, you know, I'm not sure what versions include what, but I personally recommend watching the Braindead or Dead Alive uncut version, the full uncut version, because that's the one that I feel like has the most to offer. Because I was watching some clips on YouTube, and those YouTube clips didn't have that kind of creative decision that I was mentioning about how it included the previous scene's dialogue. So I would recommend that version because I thought that it had a lot of creative decisions, and that was one of them, and it was really effective for me. And just the overall use of the gore in this film was really creative. It was really creative for a lot of the comedic effects that I was going for. There's this zombie baby, and how the zombie baby was produced in the film in terms of the narrative is really out there and hilarious. And just the way, like, again, a lot of the gore was incorporated in the film for a lot of the more comedic moments, I thought was really clever writing and a real clever use of those kind of practical effects and the kind of gore approach. And even like for the plot, like there's a lot of moments where like intestines are used in really intense ways in terms of a character not being able to get through a certain area because of just the way the intestines are kind of, blocking him from achieving his goal. And just the way that all the gore is used in this film is just like so creative. And it's of course it's over the top. It's cheesy in a lot of ways. It's really dumb, but it's so self-aware and it's so hilarious. And some of it is actually unsettling in my opinion. There's a few images in this film I was like, wow, like that's really unsettling. But like even in the large scale of these practical effects, like there's this giant thing that is done at the end of this film in terms of the main character's mother. And I'm not sure if they actually crafted this giant like practical like costume effect thing or if they just created the illusion of it being big. But either way, like it was done incredibly well and it's really impressive stuff. And even though this film was like really dumb and cheesy and fun, again, like there's actually aspects of this film in terms of the characters that like it didn't have to go out of its way to give some sort of depth or substance, but like it even goes out of its way to have this kind of substantive twist at the end of the film that I was like, wow, like you guys actually did that. You didn't even need to do that because this film was already entertaining on its own and is dumb, but you guys cared enough to actually include something that was kind of substantive, and that was really cool. And the relationship aspect in this movie, like the dynamic of that and the way that it was done reminded me so much of just like a cheesy soap opera type thing. And I just thought it was funny because it's obviously intentional. Like obviously like he's going for that kind of approach. And it just really worked for me. Like all of the very self-aware comedic approach really worked. A lot of just the fun gore stuff really worked. And there's so much going on with the gore, especially in the third act, that it was just really over the top, but really impressive stuff, and how he incorporates it in terms of the character, in terms of the story, in terms of the comedy. It's all just really incredible stuff, really well done. I really enjoyed this film, and it's really hard to really find anything that's worthy of criticizing because, again, all of it felt incredibly intentional, and all of it worked. Like, there's times where I see a film and somebody says, oh, that was a purposeful choice. But then I'll be like, okay, but I don't really agree with the purposeful choice done by the director. But here, everything that's intentional just absolutely works and is effective for the genre and the approach it is going for. So, like, I would consider Braindead or Dead Alive to be, like, again, just a masterclass in the whole B-grade, self-aware horror comedy approach. This, to me, would be the golden standard of that genre. And I just had so much fun with this film. Just know, I recommend watching the uncut version, and just know that there is so much gore in this film, and there's so much violence, but I think that if you're prepared for what you're getting into, you can have a blast with this film. I wouldn't recommend having kids in the room for this, because for us adults, it seems like just it's fun and cheesy, but again, if a kid walks into this, like, I can see this movie inflicting some sort of psychological trauma. But either way, I'm going to give Braindead or Dead Alive a 10 out of 10. I truly did not expect to give this film a perfect grade. Like, I went into this thinking, okay, yeah, horror comedy. I'm not a big fan of those, but, you know, maybe I'll have some fun with it. But this film just, like, achieved so much, it did so much, and it was just so effective from start to finish. And just me, as someone who is aspiring to be a filmmaker, just wrapping my head around trying to direct a film like this just gives me a headache. It makes me want to blow my fucking brains out. So, huge kudos to Peter Jackson for making something like this. But either way, that's all I gotta say about Braindead. I'll have a review for Repulsion coming out this weekend as well, and also one for The Cremator. So, please stay tuned for those reviews. And if you really enjoyed what I had to say about Braindead, please give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.